By the way, just a quick announcement. 2 Sundays ago, Resurrection Sunday or Easter Sunday, Sister Vilma took some pictures, family photos and all that stuff. And if you were not here last week to get a copy of those photos, we do have, I think we have them downstairs, in the room downstairs. Sister Vilma has been gracious to give us a copy of a picture that she took. But she also has some of your pictures framed on display, and you can purchase those framed photos, and everything that is collected will go towards our youth camp to support our young people to go to camp. So if you did not get any of your photos last week, go downstairs. I'm not sure if Vilma is here, but hopefully someone maybe representing the youth can kind of stand by the table and see if your pictures are available. By the way, they all came out great. Only a few were ugly. No one was ugly. They all came out really, really good. You know what they say, right? 1 out of every 3 people in this world is ugly. So if the person on your left and right is good looking, you're in trouble. I don't think there are ugly people here at Bridgepoint. I think the beauty is just a quality of people that just love the Lord. When I was growing up in the 70s, my dad always played this song, "Everybody's beautiful in their own way." And I used to wonder, is that a song for ugly people to make them feel good, in their own way, as if like you're not beautiful in the normal way, you're beautiful in your own way. So there's double meaning to, I think, every message that's out there. So you're all beautiful in your own way. John chapter 13 is what we will be reading today. And I started last Sunday a new series of the qualities, the things that kind of give a hint that we are truly disciples of Jesus Christ. Last Friday I was with a Bible study group, and I asked an interesting question. And the question is, what would you rather call yourself? Would you rather call yourself a Christian? Or would you rather call yourself a disciple of Jesus Christ? And the question is really based on the notion that sometimes words lose their meaning over time. Words lose their meaning, or words change over time. There was a time when pot is something where you grow plants in. There was a time when grass is something that cows ate. Right? But words change in their meaning. There was a time when to be called bad was an insult, but Michael Jackson made it a compliment. Oh, you're so bad. So words kind of change in their meaning with time and with culture. And I think one of the problems we have in our current culture is the word Christian has somehow lost its meaning, hasn't it, in this world? The vast majority of Americans call themselves Christian. For those of us who call Philippines homeland, an even larger percentage of Filipinos call themselves Christian. But when you look at behavior, there doesn't seem to be a consistency between calling yourself a Christian and behaving as if you were a follower of Jesus Christ. And so it's interesting that if I were to stop people in the streets and I would ask them, are you a Christian? In the United States of America, up to 2/3, maybe even more, will say, yes, I'm a Christian. But if I were to instead ask them, are you a disciple of Jesus Christ? A much smaller number would say, yes, I am. And so there's a discrepancy between what we mean by Christian in this culture and what we mean by disciple. In this culture, unfortunately, Christian simply means I was baptized in a church as a kid, I grew up attending a Christian community, or my family belongs to a certain Christian religion. It often means that as an identity, but is not a description of a personal passion. And the beauty of the word disciple, it identifies not only you as a person, but it identifies your commitment and your passion. To whom are you a disciple? A disciple is a learner. A disciple is a follower. You are a follower of whom? In this case, we say Jesus. And so if indeed you are a disciple of Jesus Christ, then the question we're asking for the next couple of Sundays is, what are the marks of someone who is a disciple of Jesus Christ? What can you see? What is observable in a person so that you can indeed say, that person is a disciple of Jesus Christ? And last week we shared a rather difficult notion that a disciple is someone who has the heart to forgive. Forgiving is very difficult, especially people that hurt you. And who else is there to forgive the people who have hurt you? And so it's very hard to forgive because people don't deserve to be forgiven. People have hurt us in ways that are unimaginable. And yet Jesus says, as you have been forgiven, so should you forgive. So that's one mark of a disciple. A disciple is a forgiving person. And today we will look at the second mark of a disciple. A disciple is someone who desires to serve. So let me read to you from the Gospel of John chapter 13. I'll start with the first verse and we'll go till about verse 17. It's a little long, but just read along with me. I'm reading from the New Living Translation, so hopefully you're able to follow along or just listen very intently. Before the Passover celebration, Jesus knew that his hour had come to leave this world and return to his Father. He had loved his disciples during his ministry on earth, and now he loved them to the very end. It was time for supper, and the devil had already prompted Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had given him authority over everything that he had that had come from the Father, and then he would return to God. So he got up from the table, took off his robe, wrapped a towel around his waist, and poured water into a basin. Then he began to wash the disciples' feet, drying them with a towel that he had around him. When Jesus came to Simon Peter, Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You don't understand now what I am about to do, but someday you will." "But no," Peter protested, "you will never, ever wash my feet." Jesus replied, "Unless I wash you, you won't belong to me." And Peter exclaimed, "Then wash my hands and my head as well, Lord, not just my feet." Jesus replied, "A person who has bathed all over does not need to wash except for the feet to be entirely clean. And you disciples are clean, not all of you." For Jesus knew who would betray him, and that is what he meant by he said, "Not all of you are clean." After washing their feet, he put on his robe again and sat down, and he asked, "Do you understand what I am doing? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, because that's what I am. And since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. I am giving you an example to follow. Do as I have done to you. I tell you the truth, slaves are no greater than their master, nor is the messenger more important than the one who sends the message. Now that you know these things, God will bless you for doing them." Let us pray. Father, we thank you so much for your word and your instruction, and we pray that in the studying of your word, our minds are not only filled with knowledge, but our lives are ultimately transformed by its truth and by the power of your Spirit. So be with us in this time of learning, of transformation, and of obedience. All for your glory, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. For those of you that were born and raised here in the United States of America, there is a concept that is a little difficult to understand that we who grew up in the Philippines know very well, and that's the idea of growing up with hired help. Many of us, even if we are not wealthy, have in our homes people that we hire to kind of help with domestic things, cooking, cleaning, laundry, taking care of the kids. And we have names for them. The most common name for them is maid. And interestingly, if a maid is a male as opposed to a female, we call them boy. I don't know why. We don't call the female girl. But if your maid is a male, we call them boy. It's very derogatory if you ask me. You know, sometimes we walk in the neighborhood and go, "Who's that guy?" That's my boy. Filipinos are funny, isn't it? But in the culture that I grew up, being a maid was not a noble profession in the eyes of most people. It was actually a very lowly job. In fact, we have terms to describe these people that we hire, and they're not very flattering terms. Atchay, Chimay, Inday. You know, these are not names you would proudly have people call you. We reserve them for the lowest jobs, and no one I knew desired to be one when they grew up. When the teacher asks the question in 3rd and 4th grade, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" No one I knew said, "A maid." Because in our mind's eye, it is such a lowly task that who would ever want to be one? And that's not unusual, because in almost every culture throughout human history, people have not wanted to be in this situation. In other cultures, it's even more dire than that. They're not merely servants, they're slaves. They're purchased, they're property. In some very strange cultures, you know, a servant is such a property that when a master dies, they would bury living servants with the master in hopes that as they reincarnate to another form, they would still have those servants with them. It's strange, isn't it? And so no one wanted to be a slave, no one wanted to be a servant. And so it's very surprising then that when Jesus shows up and he teaches us what to aspire to be, that one of the most shocking things he tells us that we should want to be is that we should want to be a servant. Why? Why would I want to be a servant? The word servant in the Bible comes from a very interesting word. There's really two general words for it, but the one most commonly used is the word doulos. Doulos. And the word doulos comes from a root word that means to tie up. To tie up. And so a doulos is actually literally the bound one. Why bound? Because you are tied up under the rulership of someone who has purchased you or who has taken ownership over you, and you are tied to their affairs. The only reason you exist now is to do the bidding of the person who has purchased you. That's why the term bond servant, have you ever heard that term before? Bond servant literally means a bound servant. A bound servant, someone who's bound, who's tied up. And the only freedom you have is the movement to do what your master wants you to do. And yet, as undesirable as that thing is, when we look at the pages of the Gospels, Jesus tells us that this is what we ought to be. That he wants us to become the bound one, a servant. Why? Shouldn't we aspire to be kings and leaders and entrepreneurs and people of great wealth and power and majesty? Shouldn't that be what we ought to be? And then when you fast forward to our modern generation, our modern culture, we're also asked to do the same thing, isn't it? When you ask people, what do you want to be? We should aspire to be something powerful and great and majestic. What should you own when you grow up? Many things, including people who can do things for me. People who will clean my plates, and people who will do my taxes, and people who will wash my cars, and people who will take care of my laundry. I want to aspire to a place where I don't have to serve anyone, but people and things can serve me. That's why we buy certain things. And in America, people are expensive, so we buy objects. We cannot buy people who will wash our clothes, so we buy washing machines. These are our mechanical slaves, aren't they? So we go to Best Buy and we go, I need a slave that can wash my clothes. And so we buy this slave called a washing machine. And we go, I need a slave to heat up my food, so we buy this slave called a microwave. And I need a slave to keep me cool. In the ancient days, you hired someone to do this, with a big feather and an ostrich feather. But now we hire and buy an air conditioning system. But these are our slaves, isn't it? Why do we buy these things? In the ancient days, you sat on a platform with handles and people would carry them on one side, right? And that's transportation. And now we go to car lots. I need a slave to transport me from one part of the city to another. So we buy this slave called a car. So we're still buying slaves. They're just technological. But we want things that will serve us. We want things that will make life comfortable for us. We even have this thing called a coffee maker. That's one of our favorite slaves, right? Coffee maker, make me coffee. Be back in 5 minutes. Better be coffee. These are our slaves. We live with slaves all over our homes. I need my hair dried. So we get the slave. Everything you own that is meant to serve you is a slave. It's just that in the third world it's cheaper to hire people to do it, but now we hire objects. And so we are trained as a culture to not aspire to serve, but we aspire to be served. Why do we work hard? So that we won't have to do things anymore. That someday somebody can do this for me, and somebody can take care of this for me, and somebody can run this errand for me. And so it is an aspiration of the modern person to not serve anyone or anything at all, but be served. So think about this. When Jesus said, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. The Son of Man, me, the Messiah, came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many. It was so countercultural. It was as countercultural then as I suppose it would be today. Can you imagine in today's world a politician who actually wants to serve? What a concept! But instead, when people aspire to political power or even in the workplace, the goal is to reach such a rank that you don't need to serve anyone, but you are served. You know, nowadays we call the cabinet members secretary, secretary of this, secretary of that. You know, back when I was growing up in the 70s under martial law, we called the cabinet ministers. Minister of Defense, Minister of Finance, Minister of this and that. But the funny thing is the word minister means servant. And yet when I looked at these ministers in governments, none of them looked like a servant. You know, none of them acted like a servant. But instead they were big shots and bosses who had people serve them. And then here's Christ who says, you want to be like me? You want to follow me? If you want to be great in God's kingdom, you must learn to be the servant of all. If you want to be great in God's kingdom, you must be the servant. And you know who Jesus had to start with? The very people that was closest to him. The apostles. The apostles had this problem. The apostles had this view of Christ is the Messiah. Okay, that's a given. I'm surrendered to the idea that Jesus is the one we've been waiting for. He's the Messiah. And I am to attach myself to him. I am to cling to him. But they had other things in mind, and the belief that by clinging to Christ, that they would then aspire and reach the places that everyone wants to reach, but they would do it faster. That's why you remember that time in the Gospels where Jesus was kind of still on the side and the apostles were talking about one another and unto one another, and they were discussing which of them is the greatest. What an interesting discussion. Can you imagine a bunch of pastors today having dinner and the topic is which of us is the greatest? You know, Peter's like, you know, I hung out with him the longest. I'm kind of like the senior around here. So surely I'm the greatest. Right? And then James and John are like, hey, we're there too. Like, whenever we hang out, they'll call us Peter, James, and John. We're like a trio. We're greater than these guys. Bartholomew, nobody even knows Bartholomew. And then Thomas like, I doubt it. And they're having this discussion on which of them is the greatest. And Jesus kind of chimes in and says, guys, you got this all wrong. Following me is not about aspiring to be the greatest. He said, if you want to be great in my kingdom, you need to learn to serve. That's how you become great. And serving is not a position there for greatness. It's a position of humility. What is humility in Tagalog? Or what is the act of being humble? Magpakumbaba. You know what the word baba means? You say it wrong. It means baba is this. Right? Baba is low. Tagalog is all about inflection. It's about how you inflect a syllable. That's why when we were in an elevator once, this American got so confused. Because he walked in, we walked in, I asked the elevator guy, go, baba baba, and the guy goes, baba baba. The guy's like, what did you just say? You said "ba" so many times. You had a conversation. Baba baba, baba baba. That's a complete conversation. So magpakumbaba, baba means down, right? If you want to go to the children's ministry, you go to the baba. And so humility is magpakumbaba, to lower yourself. To not aspire to be greater than other people, higher than other people, better than other people, but to serve. And who wants to do that? But Jesus says, if you want to be great in my kingdom, that's what you should do. And then he says, these guys are not going to get it. They're not understanding this. My words are not enough. And so during the Last Supper, he says, I need to give a sample. I need to demonstrate what I've been talking about. So while they're gathering for the Last Supper, you know, Leonardo da Vinci messed this up for us with his painting, The Last Supper. It's the way Da Vinci painted The Last Supper is nothing like how they did The Last Supper. And by the way, every Filipino dining room has a Last Supper. And did you know that the ancient Filipinos were giants? Yeah, they had these big spoons and forks. And our archaeologists were able to find them and we hanged them on our dining room wall. But when you look at the Last Supper, number one, there's this long table. No one is sitting on the other side. It's like, you know, let's all sit on one side as if they're ready for a photo op. And they're all sitting on chairs and they're eating and this and that and the other. And the original Last Supper looked nothing like that. First of all, there were no, quote, chairs during the Last Supper. People didn't sit in chairs when they had supper. Instead, you would have a rather low table. And then you would have like mats or a very short, you know, kind of elevated platform. And you wouldn't sit around the table. You would recline around the table. So essentially, there would be a very low table, and then you would each recline, but you wouldn't recline this way, you would recline this way. Makes a difference. Why wouldn't you recline this way? Why should you recline this way? Because you would have to eat with your hands. But you would never dare eat with your left hand, only with your right hand. Because this is what you do with clean things, and this is what you do with dirty things. Remember, there's no toilet paper in the ancient world. You know what I'm talking about? So what do you think this hand is for? All the dirty things that you have to do. Pick up garbage, clean yourself. This is the hand that you use it for. And so you would never use this hand to get food on the table that other people are going to take from. And so you only use the clean hand. And if you're left-handed, this is difficult. Because if you're left-handed, you're like, ooh. Right? So to avoid that, you would lean on your left arm so that you wouldn't even be tempted to reach out with your left hand. What does that mean? When you're reclined around the table, all your feet are facing the outside. Which suddenly makes sense. Because if you're looking at Leonardo da Vinci's picture, and it says Jesus washed the disciples' feet, what's he doing? He's under a table, like washing their feet. And it's like one of those movies, like, woo, woo, ow, ow, ow. The image doesn't work. But when you have a table and everyone's reclining towards the table and all their feet are facing outside, it makes sense that Jesus can then walk around the room. And because their feet are all extended outside, he can wash it. It's not unusual that their feet was washed. It's unusual who washed. Because foot washing was a very common practice in the ancient world. In the ancient world, you wear sandals. And in the ancient world, you walk through sandy, muddy roads. And no matter how clean you are, whenever you travel, your feet gets dirty. And so it was very common that when you go to somebody's house, someone would wash your feet. It's common courtesy, it's hospitality. But did you know that in the ancient world, foot washing was considered such a lowly job that if you had multiple servants in a home, it was the lowest servant of all the servants who would end up washing the feet. Even the senior servant can say, "Abay, no, maglilinis yan. Ay ka." In other words, I've been here forever. I'm the senior servant around here. Inday! Go wash their feet. But in the upper room, they're about to eat, but no one was there to wash the feet. And I bet that every one of the apostles were just waiting for someone to go, okay, maybe Philip should wash her feet. Maybe Bartholomew. Maybe Thomas. Maybe John. Maybe Simon. No one wanted to take the initiative to wash feet. Because they were thinking, well, only the lowest of the apostles should wash feet. Surely not me. I saw the transfiguration. I can't wash feet. And to their horror, their master stands up, puts a towel around his waist, which is the equivalent of putting an apron around you. And then Jesus starts walking around him, he starts washing their feet. In Instagram, we would call this awkward. How awkward. How awkward that the boss is the one washing feet. When I was waiting for the lowest of the apostles. I was waiting for the youngest guy, the guy who's hardly ever mentioned in the stories. So I always feel bad for Bartholomew. There's a Bartholomew among the 12, but there's no story about him. It's like, Bartholomew, you're neither in Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, so you might as well wash your feet. But Jesus is washing your feet. Now, how do you think you would feel if you were an apostle and Jesus is washing your feet? You're like, Jesus is there, so you can't see. You're probably looking at the other apostles going, like, what's he doing? Why is he doing this, right? And then he goes to the next guy, it's just as awkward. He goes to the next guy, it's just as awkward. And then finally he goes to Peter, and Peter's not afraid to say something. Peter's a big mouth. In every church, there's a big mouth. Which one is it? So Jesus has the basin, and he's about to go to Peter and says, excuse me, what are you doing? He goes, are you going to wash my feet? And Jesus said, well, you don't understand what I'm just about to do. He goes, Lord, look what he says. You will never, ever wash my feet. Never, ever, ever, ever. Ever, Lord, ever, ever. And then Jesus said, Peter, you don't get it. If I don't wash your feet, you cannot take part with me. And then Peter overreacts, as usual, right? Peter's like, he either feels this way or he feels that way. You know, people have no middle emotions. They're like, either like, yay! Or, my life is horrible. Peter's like that. He's either like this or that. Maybe like to show you how impulsive Peter is. Remember that story where they're fishing and they see Jesus in the shore? And they go, it's Jesus. And so the apostles start rowing. Peter dives and just swims. He could have stayed in the boat. They would have gotten there anyway. But Peter's like, yeah, I'm going to go for it. So he says, oh, okay. If you, this is Joe Pesci doing Peter. Okay. You know my feet? Okay. Not just my feet, but all of me. All of me. Here's Peter just overreacting. This is Peter just like he doesn't get it. And then Jesus explains, look, someone who's already clean doesn't need to take a bath again. By the way, this is another thing that's difficult to appreciate, because how many of you take a bath virtually every day? Don't raise your hand. In the Philippines, you take a bath 2-3 times a day, right? In America, once a day, once every 2 days. Hopefully not once every 2 days. But we take a bath fairly often. In the ancient world, people were lucky if they took a bath every month. Where would you take a bath in the ancient world? There are no bathrooms. Right? Think about it. So you would go to public bath. The Romans had public bath, but you don't go there every day. That's expensive. You would go there for like every 3,000 miles. It's like an oil change, right? Like I walked 3,000 miles. So I'm going to go to the bath. But in between 3,000 miles, you just do what in the Philippines we call isnasco. Right? You don't take a bath. You just take a rag and you just wipe off the parts that are dirty. But you don't need to take a bath again, because you're really not that dirty. But the one that needs to be washed regularly was the feet, because it's always dirty. You're traveling, you're moving, you're walking, you wear sandals, you got sand, you got mud. So the foot needs to be washed regularly. And you know, someone even argued that theologically, baptism is to bathing as foot washing is to sanctification. You know, when we're baptized, we only need to be baptized once. That's it. Because you're clean. At that point, you're clean. But as you walk this life, the dirt of this life gets to you, and so you don't need another bath. You don't need another baptism. But you need foot washing. You need that occasional cleansing. And Jesus said, unless this happens, you have no part with me. In other words, unless you go through the regular process of being clean, cleaning out the parts of you that get dirty regularly, then you can't have a part with me. And so when Peter says, then wash all of me, Jesus is saying that's not necessary. Let's just clean the part that gets dirty. He's teaching them a lesson. And then it really comes home in verse 12 when he says, do you understand what I was just doing? In other words, Jesus demonstrated something, gave a demo, but he says, did you get the lesson? Did you understand it? Sometimes you give people a lesson and people don't get it, right? Like I have a son, I won't tell you who. But one time we were in the car, and then Bruno Mars was playing When I Was Your Man. Right? And I didn't bring you flowers, I didn't do this and that, and now you're gone from my life, right? I should have brought you flowers. Should have held your hand. Right? So I say to my son John, I say, I wanted my son to learn this lesson about relationships and love, right? I said, John, what did you learn from this song? And John's like, needs more drums. Needs more drums. There's no drum track. I should have brought you to. That's the lesson he got. Just teaching him about relationships. Like, no drum track. So here's the problem with us humans. We don't always get it. Sometimes we drop a hint and they still don't get the lesson. And Jesus said, okay, I just did something profound here. I just washed your feet. I was not supposed to, but I just washed your feet. But here's the thing. Did you get it? Did you understand? And so, in order for them not to understand, he clarifies what he just did. Very quickly, let me give you the lessons that he teaches us. Number one, he teaches us that his position is the foundation for servanthood. Verse 13. You call me teacher, you call me Lord, and you are correct because that is what I am. In other words, you first have to understand that I didn't serve you because I was a servant. I served you as a master who was willing to serve. That's different, right? Because if the servant serves, there's nothing very impressive about that. Right? When somebody's doing their job, that's not impressive. That's why we're never in awe at toll collectors. You know, when we give them $5 and they take it, we never go, no, we never do, because that's not impressive. They were supposed to do that. But if you see the governor taking time out of his day to take toll and clean the booth, you go, wow, Governor, thank you so much. I didn't realize you were willing to do that. That's impressive. Because Jesus said, did you get this? Did you get this? I'm a master. I'm a teacher. And I'm not above, I'm not beyond serving. Get that number one lesson. Number two, he taught us that his behavior then becomes the model for servanthood. His behavior then becomes a model to us. He says, since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. I have given you an example to follow. And do as I have done for you. You know, in the book, In His Steps, we have the popularity of that phrase, what would Jesus do? And back in the 90s, WWJD was everywhere. But in that book, the author asks us to ask this question, before you do anything, before you attempt anything, before you think anything, before you act on anything, ask yourself, what would Jesus do? And I think in any situation, it's appropriate to say, what would Jesus do in this situation? Would he forgive? Would he love? Would he serve? And in this case, Jesus is saying, yes, I would serve. Even if people are not worthy of the service, even if they're not nice to you, just serve. The third lesson he teaches us is that his standing becomes the measure of servanthood. I tell you the truth, slaves are not greater than their masters, nor is the messenger more important than the one who sends the message. If I have done this to you, if this is my standing in your life, if you're a disciple, meaning you're my follower, then how dare you think that you're exempt from the things that I've been doing and that I've been willing to do? If I'm willing to die for people, if I'm willing to give my life to people, then so should you. By the way, this is the reason why the first and second century believers thought that it was such a pleasure to die for the faith. They never ran away from persecution. This is interesting. I know this is sidebar. But fast forward 2,000 years, in the United States of America, when we get persecuted, we want to sue. Right? Oh, they're violating my religious beliefs. Let me call a lawyer. We'll sue them back, right? That's the prevailing attitude in this country, isn't it? But in the first and second century, when they were being punished for their faith, when they were being persecuted for their faith, they said, Lord, thank you for counting me worthy to be your servant, and in the same way they did not love you, they don't love me too. They took your life, then I should be willing to take my life. One of the reasons we have not impressed American culture with Christianity is because modern American Christianity looks nothing like gospel Christianity. We're very proud, we're very haughty, we want the biggest churches and the most fancy cars, and we like to drive in jet planes, and that's our version of Christianity. We want to be politically powerful, we want to have economic clout. We want to reject the poor, we don't feed the hungry. We turn back the immigrant. And it's nothing like what we see here. It's a perverted form of Christianity that we have in this country. It's no wonder no one wants it. You want to be a disciple? Stop acting like a modern Christian and be an ancient disciple. Do what Jesus told us to do. Fourth lesson, last one. Jesus promises a motivation for the servant. Now that you know these things, God will bless you for doing them. What an awesome thing. You know, and I heard this my whole life. When you serve the Lord, you shouldn't do it for rewards. When you serve the Lord, you shouldn't long for something. And I get that, and I agree with that. When you serve the Lord, you should do it merely for service. But that has never stopped God from promising rewards. In His grace, in His glory, in His majestic favor, even though we shouldn't serve for the reward, it has not stopped Him from saying, you'll be rewarded. He who endures until the end will be saved. There awaits for you a crown of righteousness. If you do these things, God will bless you. There's something powerful about a motivation. That's why athletes work so hard. They're working towards something. That's why you work so hard at work, because you're attaining to something. Nothing evil, nothing inherently wrong about desiring and being happy that you will be rewarded. And Jesus said, when you serve one another, if you get this lesson, then God will bless you. Can you imagine how many blessings you have blocked from your life simply because you refuse to serve? Interesting, isn't it? When you just serve, when you just do, you just start to see God take care of it. Let me give you three very quick pointers. I'm running out of time, and there's one more thing I need to do. How can you begin serving? Let me give you 3 questions you can ask yourself. Number 1, what can you do now? What can you do now? Some people say, look, Pastor Ed, I'm going to serve the church someday. When I get there, when I find my gift, when I get this much, when I attain this degree, and I'll serve the church someday. But the question is, what can you do now? Can you cook? Can you park cars for us? Can you fix chairs? Can you stack things? Can you start with what you can do? Stop promising what you don't have. You know, from the time I pastored this church almost 26 years ago, people have said to me, Pastor Ed, the moment I win Lotto, you will have a big building. That was 26 years ago. There's a reason God doesn't let you win Lotto. Number 1, you won't buy us a big building, trust me. It's not going to happen. And when you get all that money, you go, hey, maybe small building. Think twice when you have the money, right? And number 2, you're promising something you don't have. It's easier to promise what you don't have. It's like me saying, hey, as soon as I'm thin, that's never going to happen. Stop promising things that are never going to happen. What can you do now? Can you cook? Can you clean? Can you do this? Can you try something? Can you pick someone up so that they can go to Bible study or go to church? What can you do now? Second question is, what do you want to do eventually? What's something higher? Do you want to sing for the Lord? Do you want to teach a Bible study? Do you want to do missions? What's something you want to aspire to that you really can't do now, but you're longing to do it? And number 3 is, what do you need in order to do what you want to do? What do you need? Do you need more education? Do you need training? Do you need resources? Do you need to learn? Because if you don't create a path from here to there, then the there will never come. But you have to start somewhere. And then you have to grow into something. And so my prayer for all of us today is that we will serve whatever service means, whatever it means to meet a need, whatever it means to wash someone's foot. We'll be willing to do that. Let me pray for you, and then there's something I need to do before the service. Father, I thank you for the model of servanthood. I thank you for teaching us the lessons. And I pray, Lord God, today that as Christ has shown us how beautiful, how wonderful it is to be master and teacher, and yet willing to serve. You did not come to be served, but to serve. May we do the same. May we be willing to do the same. And in our service to you, may we bring you glory, and may we honor the sacrifice of Jesus Christ always. In his name we pray. Today's a rather special day. Before I let you go, I want to introduce you some of the changes that are taking place at Bridgepoint. You know, in Bridgepoint, we have several ministries and activities that we do. We have people who lead these ministries. And the way it works in Bridgepoint is, you know, when you serve Bridgepoint, we don't pay you money. We don't really have a budget for that. We don't hire people. Everyone you see here singing, they do that because they love the Lord. People who come early to make sure that things are clean, they do that out of the goodness of their heart. People prepare coffee because they just want to do that. People every now and then will put a spread of food in the parking lot, and then no one gets paid for any of that. That's just people willing to serve. But there's people who lead us in that. And we know how intensive these things can be. So what we normally do with our members is we just ask them to commit to a year of leading a ministry. If they want to do another year, that's fine. There are no term limits. But we ask for a 1-year commitment, and when they feel they're done and they want to do something else, then they're done. So today there's a couple of people that have expressed to us that they've served to the point where they just want to try something else, do something else, make room for more leaders, and we want to acknowledge them, and then we also want to transition into some people who will take over these ministries. So let me first of all introduce to you the people who have been serving in certain capacities, and we want to acknowledge the service that they have done. I don't know if they're all here, but number one, serving us almost forever in children's ministry is Sister Vicky. Is she? I know they had a long. Oh, Sister Vicky's here. Friends from Hawaii. And before you come here, Tamina wants to give you something just to appreciate. We want to give all of our servants a certificate of appreciation. We appreciate you. And we're also giving you a caffeine card. Taking care of our facility, everything you see here, the parking lot, the building, Brother Ray, is he here? Brother Ray takes care of everything. Brother Ray's our handyman, dandy man, all around man, he-man, you're the man, Mandy man. Thank you, brother. Take your place here. Is Chili here, taking care of our finance? Is she? She's not here. Oh, she's also a tax preparer, so she's very busy today. But she'll still be in finance, but she's passing on. Hospitality takes care of us, feeds us, fixes this place up. Sister Ella. Thank you very much. Leading the great men of Bridgepoint, and he's going to move over actually to another ministry, but Sheldon. We asked for a one-year commitment from Sheldon. It turned out to be how many years, Sheldon? About 6 years. I think Carlotta is here, but Carlotta has been leading our missions program, our missions ministry. I don't think she's here today. Sister Adam leading an employer ministry. By the way, she's not going to stop praying. Okay, so this is not a retirement for these people. This is just them moving on to bigger and greater things. Thank you, Abin. June de la Cruz ushering us. Brother June's been ushering for years. You know, when we go to a restaurant, he still opens doors for us. Banji, I think, is still in the Philippines, but Banji has been leading our ladies, our women's ministry. She and her mom just completed a medical mission in the Philippines, so we'll see her in a few weeks. I think if Andrew and Rhea are here, are they downstairs? Are they not here today? But Andrew has been leading our youth, and then Rhea has been leading our media team, so we'll make sure we give them a caffeine. I think they need it to stay awake with Abby when she can't sleep. But these are the wonderful men and women who have served us really, really well, and they now complete that particular assignment that we've given to them, and they'll be moving on to other things. Let's give them a hand. Some of the incoming people, by the way, you'll see some of them transition, but you stay right there. Vicky took care of children, now Sister Cynthia Layson. Is she downstairs? Sister Cynthia is now going to take care of our children. We don't have a caffeine card for you, that'll come in when you work. So Sister Cynthia will take care of all our children downstairs. She's FBI cleared. And insured. Is Sister Vilma here? I didn't see her today. Vilma? She might be out of town. But Vilma will be taking over hospitality. She's the one who took our pictures. Dean is back there. Dean, come here. And Dean is now going to take over media. So everything, website, Facebook, Instagram, publications, anything to do with media. Dean, by the way, they're married, so don't worry if they kiss. Wearing many, many, many hats, but also adding music ministry is Ryan Alon. Sister Edith is taking care of outreach. Edith, are you here? Sheldon's place for men, but he's not here today, is Buddy. The Buddy's not here. It's actually his daughter's birthday today. I know I'm over, but I had a story. When Katarina was born, I told them, they did not listen to me. But I told Buddy and Bidu to name their daughter Isabella Raquel. Isabella Raquel. What a beautiful name. And then Buddy asked me why. I said, so her initials will be IRS. April 15. They didn't do it. And then, unfortunately, my wife cannot walk because she's got gout, but my wife is taking over the women's school. I did not do it! I did nothing! But my wife will be taking over the women's ministry, and so I think she started last Wednesday already doing that, so you'll see more of her. And then I'm very happy about this. Sheldon is not quitting, but he is Jen here?
Yes.
Sheldon and Jen, then now you can move here, Sheldon. Sheldon and Jennifer there are leading the couples ministry. And we checked their wedding license, it's valid. They can lead. Brother Joel Milan is leading our youth ministry. Joel is also the youngest member of the men's fellowship. So whenever we talk about blood pressure, diabetes, he's silent, he has nothing to share. But you'll get there, Brother Joel. And then helping me in the pastoral team, the pastoral staff as a support, will be Tamina and Vicky. So before you get to me, you need to get to them. Or my wife. But in all seriousness, without these two women, I would be overloaded with work, and I would not be able to give time to prayer and visiting you guys and doing Bible studies and just taking care of pastoral work. I would never be able to finish all of that if this team was not doing that with us. And so there's a couple of changes. We have not eliminated the prayer ministry. Instead, we have incorporated that as a pastoral function. And so I'll be heading that with a team. And also, we have not eliminated our finance ministry. What we have done with the finances, we have simply put it as a function of our church council, which it should be anyway, along with facilities. So we've made some internal changes, but these are basically the people who are moving out, but still serving in other ministries. And this is the team that will be serving us. So we'll post their pictures and their faces and their names and bulletins and our website, etc., so that our members get familiar with them. But welcome our team as they come to serve us. They're committed to serve at least 1 year, which means by February, March of next year, they'll be crawling into church, really tired, but they'll be okay. And so would you join me, would you stand as we end the service, lay your hands upon all these people, stretch a hand forward as we serve the Lord together in ministry. Father in heaven, I thank you that we are surrounded by men and women who are willing to serve only because you have taught us to be a servant. That to be great in your kingdom, we do not aspire to heights, but we aspire to lowliness. We are willing to do the very things that needs to be done so that the work of the kingdom is accomplished, the needs of the church are met, and that the community is reached with the love of Jesus Christ. I thank you for those on my left who have served so faithfully, and as you open more doors for them to serve in other ways, would you just bless them tremendously to not only be servants, but teachers and models and mentors and coaches for other people to serve. And those on my right, may you bless them as they enter into a new endeavor of leading in ministry. They lead us, they lead this church through service, through lowliness, but through bringing you glory always. And Father, thank you for a wonderful team. Thank you for a wonderful congregation. And together we make a commitment to serve you above all. In the name of Jesus Christ we pray. Amen. I know I brought you over the noon hour. I apologize for that, but our worship team is about to lead us very quickly in a song. And And as they do that, let's thank the people. If you saw someone in front and you see them in the back, give them a hug, give them a handshake, thank them for their service. And for those of you who greet one another in the love of the Lord, may God bless you as you go and be at the Pacifica.